So let's move on mute if I can. She can hear now. Shelley, you can hear us now? You're muted, Shelley.
I can, thank you.
Great. Okay, are we good to go?
We're good to go.
All right, it is, we'll call it 12 o'clock and we're calling the Board Finance Committee meeting to order. If you'll take a note of who is in the room. We have an agenda. Do you have a motion to approve the agenda?
So.
Okay, we'll consider that approved. I'll be the second on that one, Shelley. Public. Okay, great. Public participation. Do we have anybody here from the public that wishes to address the committee? Hearing, seeing none. We have the February 9th, 2024 minutes in our packet. And we have a motion.
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
We have a motion, Shelley, second. Okay. All right, so we're on to the 2024 financial statement review and discussion. Joe Warner, CFO.
Thank you. Looking at the January financials, revenue were short of budget again. Notice that continued to be on the hospital side. Because of the departments that were to be well below budget and the prior months were OR, pharmacy, CT. Some of that has to do with just referral patterns, bring up the docs too. Bad debts are starting to come down as we start getting collections spun up. We use that early out collector and we're getting more and more accounts back. So we're getting stuff turned around. So it's starting to look better and better every month. We did start with a contract Medicare biller. So we signed them up last month. We've been getting them onboarded over the last 2 weeks, and they should start actually billing Medicare either today or Monday. So we should see some of our AR on the hospital side start coming down. So hopefully that will help us get a good handle on where our contractual is on a monthly basis. On the expense side, contract labor continues to run real high, particularly at Wildflower Court. And we saw a bump in the last month with the addition of Crisis. So they use quite a bit of contract labor over there to staff that. We also added some in imaging and ultrasound, 1 or 2 in OR. So we've had to spend some more on just to keep services going. Looking down the expense line, we did have some reclassifications. So as we went through the budget process, with the line item dig into every budget with people, we saw stuff that was misclassified. One of the big ones that stood out was where we were expensing off the Da Vinci monthly fee. It was hidden other income, so we had to move that whole year's amount up to rentals and leases. So you see rentals and leases take a big jump, and there's a big negative down other operating revenue. In addition to that, it was part of the cleanup. We were looking at our CIVNA, our software-based IT assets on a monthly basis. So I had to get them spun up. So there's some year-to-date entries on that. So we're ready for audit when it gets going. And on the depreciation and amortization, some of that has to do with, we had some old assets from prior years that we had on our books that we never started depreciating. So we started getting deeper and deeper into that, and there's going to be more impact to that over the coming months. We have some CIB projects that are sitting on the CBJ's books that we need to start getting spun up and depreciated. And so the way they close assets, I reach out to the auditors, I see Deb's giving me the look. The way they close projects when CBJ thinks it's closed and it's ready to roll over us, they send it over to us. And so we have projects that haven't had activity since FY22, FY23 that have not been finalized and spun over. So we're doing a big push on them to get those done, to get depreciation starting, get it in year. That makes sense. In conjunction with that, we're looking at the total amount of all these prior year impacts. I've been working with Angie down at the city to see if this justifies looking at last year's audit or not talking about that as well. So it goes back to materiality of its the numbers.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask a question? So what I just want to be clear, what you're saying is there's a potential, depending on materiality, that we will take that depreciation from those old projects in prior years.
Potentially, yes.
Otherwise, if it's not considered material, we're going to eat it this year.
Correct.
So if I could follow up on that. So there's So there's, just to be clear, there's two types of CIP projects, one that's on the hospital's books and the other that's on the CBJ's books, right? So the explanation that you just gave is the CBJ's book, correct?
Yes,
Okay, so now tell us about the one that's on the hospital's books.
so the ones that were on our hospital books. It was actually brought up last year from one of our internal accountants to the prior CFO as to whether we wanted to book it or not. And the email communication that I received, it was stated that they wanted to see if the auditors found it. And if not, we flag it, we put it into this year. So the auditors did not catch that CIP, obviously, because it's still sitting on our books. Well, I just started appreciating it right now.
And how much was that adjustment?
That one was 63,000. Well, I haven't done the full catch up. This year was 63,000.
Yeah.
So that's what hit January. The prior years was 280 or something like that, if I remember correctly.
And that is yet to be recorded.
That's yet to be recorded.
So we have 280,000 in prior period that, okay. And, okay,
On that one line, the specific project that I told you about.
yeah. So you would make the call as to whether you'd restate for the ones that are on your books, not the CBJ, right?
I guess that's a good question and something I have to go back with Angie, like,
Okay.
since it's kind of the CBJ's overall audit, we're just a piece of it, do I have that authority to open it? Because I know they haven't finalized their audit yet either. And so,
Yeah, there was a recent. We've had a history of these these corrected errors from prior years and I know the one that happened on the 340B stuff. The hospital made that determination on their own to record that in their financial statements and carry through to the city, so. I would just encourage us to make our own call about whether we want to do that and then see how it lines up, and it's your judgment on that, Jim, obviously, but. For sure.
Mr. Chairman, just to recognize that our new CFO is really digging into the books and trying to get down to a clean set of books and trying to correct a number of things. When you have turnover, it's not unusual to have these sorts of things going on. One of the things he and I have talked about on the artist, to get accurate books so that we can use those to ensure that we're managing appropriately. So just want to say how much I appreciate Joe digging in with him and his staff to do this.
It's a lot of work for sure. Any questions on the, you're not, I'm sorry, you keep going. Sorry.
just going down the list, we are now receiving rates from the CBJ on a monthly basis. We start posting everything from monthly versus quarterly, as we were doing prior. In addition to this, I reached out, one of the companies we engaged to look at our prior year cost reports was, I think it's Zericor Associates out of Spokane, and so they found a number of items and they've suggested that we would go for the FY22, cost reports to make adjustments in those years. So we've engaged them to start that process, and so what they'll do is they'll take all the information, go through new classifications that are allowable, they come back with, basically a new cost report, and at that point, we decide whether we reopen and refile at that point, if that makes sense. So I've engaged them to do that, and so their preliminary assessments, FY22 could have adjustments up to $100,000. So it could be more, could be less as we go through change load. So I just wanted to keep you guys aware of that. I had reported last month on the APR DRG impact, through the first month of the program, $150,000 in that decreased payment for Medicaid on the inpatient account. So they've actually gone back and reprocessed a lot of them. A lot of them were processed at air paid lower amounts than they should have. And so as we closed out through the end of February, we were sitting at the 750. So they reprocessed a lot of those counts. So it's not quite as bad as initially appeared. It's still not good. And we're still working with the state on how we get some of these reimbursements, but not specifically on the MHU side where we saw the biggest decrease. Wildflower Court, the billing for that, we had been told from Medicaid that we should have the number back on Wednesday. We haven't received that as today, but there was communication. And there were some promises that we'd have the number by the end of today. So there've been a lot of promises this week on Wildflower Court, but hopefully we're drawing that to a close and start the billing process on that. Hospice,
Just a pause there, you've got around $7 million in receivables, you said.
so when we get that going, we should see cash start coming up pretty substantially as we start rolling through that. No updates on hospice as of today. Home health is being surveyed this week, and so that'll kick off the kind of timeline when we start going with them with the. Because it's about 120 days from now, we should be going with home health as well. That's in my report. Is there any questions?
This is just a sidebar question, if I may. Do our relatively new services, hospice, homes, wildfire court, do they maintain separate cash accounts, or do they all roll into our CBJ treasury?
Shelley, do you have any questions?
Just one question. Is there any idea why we're down 32 surgeries for the month?
Yeah, I think some of it is when we have surgeons take time off, we have a couple surgeons that take, a week off a month. And then some plan trips, and so we do see that sort of a decrease. We are trying to track that and looking at how it relates to migration and trying to get a percentage on that. It's kind of hard to track at the moment. But Courtney, our OR director, and myself are looking into when we see volumes drop. We actually had a meeting this week and have a plan in place to how we can potentially shift some hours for block time to open up more after 5 kind of time without affecting on-call team. And that will help us get surgeries in kind of after physician clinics are closed, and then also help us increase the volumes coming through the OR. So we're actively working on ways to, a lot of it has to do with the block times and how the block times are reserved for each surgeon. It kind of gives us some inflexibility at times to work in those other cases. So we're working on that through the OR committee.
Great, thank you.
Anything else, Deb? What's the credit and other operating expenses for the month?
We had the Da Vinci monthly expense move up to rentals and leases. So that's one of those items we found during the budget process. It was hitting some random account where it should have been in rentals and leases.
So you did a catch up there.
We didn't catch up. Another piece of that was we had some Civita expenses that were down there that moved up to amortization. That's a smaller piece of it. So most of it was cleaning up the books. That's why you see that there.
Okay. And then back to your point about the monthly investment income, so starting in January, that's there.
They gave us that number. We posted that based on that.
Awesome. So and bear with me a little bit, the receivable number is up about $10 million year over year for January. We know what 7 million of that is,
That's the Medicaid piece I was referring to. So there is some Medicare side and some Medicare side that I wasn't factoring into that number. So Medicaid,
Okay.
I think it's probably side of that. Wow.
gotcha. And then the bond payable, no, I think we're okay. I'm okay on that, actually. Okay. No other questions? That's not on that, Joe. Anything else? Thank you. So moving on to the Zoll defibrillator, Kim.
There, I believe this is on page 15 of your packet. Last time we replaced these Zoll was about 7 years ago. Their lifespan's about, the lifespan about 5 years. You can go for the company for 7. After 7 years, they're no longer supported. So 7 years ago, those were replaced pretty much housewide and in all our clinics too with the AEDs. The original budgeted amount was for 200,000 and some change. When the quotes came in for to replace these, we were $160,000 short. So we're here to ask finance committee to approve the additional 160 for the replacement of the computer and then to move that.
Thank you. Any questions for Kim?
Through the chair, I'm guessing, Kim, that's just increase in prices due to, what do I want to say? Companies increasing their prices, correct?
Correct. I think part of it was when I looked back, pardon me, through the chair, it looked like we paid about 214,000 and some change in 2017. That's what, a little less than that for an unknown reason was allotted for the FY24 capital budget. And I'm not sure why that was decreased, but some of their increase in the numbers are because they are switching so the AEDs we currently have, they have the 2 pads on them where you could use the bystanders, where you could use the adult pads, and then you'd have to change it to a pediatric pad. Zoll has now made that 1, and I think that helps that increase the charges on that. So now you just have 1 pad for pediatric and adult, and then the machine will guide you to, then you hit the button for whichever patient you're working for or working with.
Less to expire with the 2 pads.
Exactly.
Fix and ask a question, Kenny.
No, I thought it was a pretty good explanation in the back of it.
I have a question. I'm ready to make a motion.
Sure.
I move the BRH Finance Committee of Bartlett Regional Hospital approve the request of an additional $160,000 for the replacement of the Zoll defibrillator. Maybe I should not be speaking still. Yeah, defibrillator at some keys are really hard. And move to the full board for approval.
I second that motion.
Section.
Okay, real quick. Do you think we should make it 160, 175,000, give us some leeway? If there's gonna be any other additional costs in here?
I think that number, we actually did inflate this a little bit. They left a couple things off the original quote. And so when I went back, we added that in there, and then we added a buffer, about a $4,000 buffer, just in case it went over that, but I don't expect we're gonna need any more than 160,000.
Thank you. So Jean is up for the next one. I'm not seeing her online. Am I missing that?
I could do this one.
Okay, go ahead, Joe.
We had a meeting with Gene, Mark, and Nate. And so what they came up with is the CT project is running over budget, or is estimated to run over budget when it gets to the end. So this would be a transfer between the CIP that was set up to run the CT capital project and the deferred maintenance CIP that we kind of fund on an annual basis. So my understanding is this would be a transfer between the two. This is my first CIP transfer, so sorry for the poor explanation, but they kind of give the background and it's detailed in the packet there if you guys want to read through that.
Yeah. And I'm not opposed to this at all. I don't ever remember the Bartlett board doing a CIP transfer.
I've never done one, but this was handed to me from CBJ as the request they needed to move the funds, and it has to go back up to the assembly. So I'm just
Yeah.
following what.
Normally it's done at assembly level, I thought. Yeah, okay. Any questions, Deb or Shelley?
No.
Motion?
I'm on the wrong one, sorry. I move that we approve the finance committee approves the transfer. The CIP transfer and moves it to the board for approval.
I second it.
Board or full assembly, the letter on the page says full assembly. We have to go to the board first and then the assembly, I assume?
And that's the calendar they gave me, so it was us, the board, and then onto the assembly.
And you said board, didn't you?
I did say board.
Second, Shelley?
I second.
Okay.
Just real quick, so, is this gonna delay this process any longer, or are we just paying them?
My understanding,
Through the chair, no, we actually just met this week on this project. All in all, I think this was actually a very smooth project, and work is. We're working on, we're past substantial completion, we're doing punch list work, but this won't impact any deliverable portions of the project. This is just a financial exercise on that, perfecting for financial closeout.
When this goes up, after this gets approved by the board, it'll be just pretty much cleanup work for the assembly just to approve.
Yeah, we're getting ready to be able to ship off the rental MRI and get back to normal.
These are usually consent agenda items. at the
This will
assembly.
be on our consent agenda too, probably.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on, Joe, on the item 9.
So item 9, we've talked extensively about the shortcomings of the Meditech system in regards to that county. And so what this proposes is and it maybe it kind of implies that we'll pass the budget and the capital budget that's in the next meeting, but this would let us go out to RFP to start conducting research on what is out there for ERP systems or accounting software systems. Not only the system, but the implementation of the system. So we're looking for a suite of services. So we can go out and get the ball rolling with the expectation that we can get acceptable and hopefully implementing it. Fall. We have good information to provide you. In addition to just having good accounting software, there's a lot of workflow processes we do on our side that are just manual. And so I expect to see a decrease in this, or maybe we can redeploy those people doing more, reconciliations of accounting software versus just journal entry after journal entry. And we have multiple systems in place trying to club together what a modern system does by itself. That makes sense.
Does the capital portion of the budget include an estimate for replacement, and what is our estimate?
So my estimate was 90,000 for the capital piece of it. And this being, if it becomes a cloud-based system, there would be some simple implications. So I don't know how those have been approved here in the past. If you have to do those as capital approvals, or that's just done as an operating kind of expense. You guys know? Because it kind of changed where it sits, between the balance sheet, but okay. It's just the less too much.
Those are annual contracts though, aren't they? For that software?
My guess is it'd be 3 to 5 years. That's what I had at my hospital down south, but
Oh, really?
it ended up being some of that.
Sage is annual. So
Oh, is that?
I think that's what drives it. It's a
Yeah,
multi-year.
it's over 12 months.
Yeah.
And maybe they're changing that now as that starts impacting people's balance sheets.
So 90,000 plus implementation cost as well, though, right, Jeff?
Yeah, so it'd be, which is the unknown piece.
Yeah.
So
Double.
I kind of kept it, yeah,
That's what I was trying to get to. The cost of the software
so I
is
did,
usually,
I did a system on the last hospital, we did the full thing for 90,000 for implementation. It's kind of unknown, so that's why I'm going this route, RFP, so we have good numbers to come back to you guys from the request.
Good with that. Shelley, any questions on that?
No questions for me. I move the BRH Finance Committee of Bartlett Regional Hospital to approve the request of going out for an RFP for the selection and implementation of a new ERP system.
I'll second.
So just for discussion, yeah,
Does this need to go to the board? For board for approval?
I would think so, yeah. I think it does.
So we should, I'd like to amend and add on and forward to the full board for approval onto the.
No, I think it's important, it's just to get in the record that we discussed the reason, why do we not have, what is it about the existing system that doesn't make it a modern system that allows you to do what it is that you want to do from the new system? That's important to, why we would approve this.
So the biggest workflow issue I see, and this one's pretty straightforward, the approval process and internal control around invoice approval. So in a new system, you're able to set up, an infrastructure and like hierarchy on who can approve who, and that's very lined up. But we use M-Files, which is a third-party system that sits on top of Meditech for our invoice approval to help accomplish that. And so we have these additional steps and workflows just so we can be compliant with, prior issues obviously causing some of these things. So in a new system, you drag and drop invoices into the approval process. It pre-populates all the information. You shoot it up the line for approval. Coding happens in there as well. Or it attaches from, you can pull the invoice and drop it on a PO and that shoot it out.
Machine reading of invoices.
Machine reading, so it pre-populates all your fields. So I mean, it decreases the time that, AP staff spending on it, how much accounting does for journal entries. And a lot of stuff can be automated on that side too. So when you do prepaid invoices or amortizations, that's all built in the system. Fixed assets live in that system.
Right.
Does that kind of answer?
It does. What about the reporting in though? Because I know that the reporting and close are important too, and that's. So if you just add on.
So I can just explain the difference between what Meditech is. So in Meditech, when I spit out a set of financials, it's just a document. That's all I get. In the modern system, I can pull it up on my screen, and then if I see differences, you click on other operating, it dives into that, gives you the list of accounts, and it gives you the discrepancies, and you can drill down to the invoice level and answer your question versus running 7 different reports, trying to explain or answer a question as to why something was different from the prior month of budget. And so from my perspective, it makes my job 10 times easier because it all sits there in front of me at the click of a button too. And then if I need to move something, I find something wrong, it's a right click, reclassify, and I'm able to move stuff as well versus shooting about moving somebody.
So the Meditech architecture, then is it fair to say that it just has not kept up with the evolution of what's capable in the
Yeah.
systems?
I think Ian's touched base on this in the past. Meditech has basically dumped all their money into being a EMR at this point. They've let that kind of slide. And I think it might be purposeful. I mean, they only have so much, assets to dedicate to improvement. So they're gonna try to compete on the EMR side, which is probably the bailiwick versus the accounting software side.
With this new program, we're gonna be able to eliminate some programs too, so there's actually gonna be a lot of savings.
Yeah, we're trying to qualify that. We'll look at all the contracts. If there's pieces of Meditech that go away, there's files that goes away. So we'll look at all of the redundancies and see what we can get rid of as we go through this process.
So I know we're in the process of doing redundancies throughout the whole organization too. So,
Yeah.
What do we pay for Meditech support a year? Yeah. Is there a support number?
I don't know the piece that is. I looked at it. I just don't know off the top of my head right now. Sorry.
Yeah, you had a point.
No, all the reasons our CFO gave are more than enough to want a new system.
Right.
I would add the management perspective to not only the finance, which he focuses on streamlining workflows, better internal controls, faster reports. As we've gotten more complex, though, you have to understand our financial systems or accounting systems are really our management systems. Therefore, how able we are to match a budget with actual and hold our leaders accountable, that improves the accountability. As we've gotten more and more different entities within ourselves, we can kind of co-mingle them. We can also then start breaking out, what does this entity look, even though it's part regional, this entity has a different look in economics that'll help us to discern where we need to go, in terms of improvement. So there's a lot of need from the management side to be able to link on and have a modern system of this nature.
I have a couple questions. So speaking of modern system and allowing our management to have better control over their budgets, are we looking at something that will allow selected access to the system, or are we going to have to? Are the directors and managers going to have to rely on accounting to supply them with reports?
So in the new systems, you assign all the directors, they give them reports and responsibilities, and they have the same drill down capabilities I would. So if they have questions or I have questions to them, they can drill right down to, invoice level and see the detail in front of them versus relying on us to pull the reports to give them that information.
Perfect.
So these systems have an inquiry ability that you can distribute to managers for their respective areas.
Yeah.
Which is incredibly powerful.
And versus like batch accounting, which is Meditech, where you have to post everything, everything in the new systems is all real time. So, we put an invoice in, it pops up with our financial statements real time. And so it's just slick.
Yeah. So we've got a motion and a second. Are there any objections to this? Thank you. And Joe, back to you on the FY25 budget.
Doing a full presentation, I'll just go over it. Erin helped me put this together and she picked a great quote, I think. There is no shortcut to achievement. Life requires thorough preparation in areas of worth anything. So it kind of sets the stage with what the budget is. We have a lot of work in front of us, and so the budget kind of sets the stage with that. So the way we did the budget is basically, the budget represents how we operate today with a few minor tweaks we've made over the last couple of months. So personnel were budgeted as we are staffed today. As we were fully staffed, if we had all the positions staffed, and that rules through the benefits, and salaries and wages. Contract labor, we had a small budget in there, basically 15%, and that makes up the incremental cost difference between a full-time equivalent and the contract labor. So that assumes that we will have some contract labor, but the costs are more on the FTE side, if that makes sense. Bodies and services, those were pulled in from what the directors had put into their budgets. So these were the requests. We did sit down and I did a one-on-one meeting with their senior leadership in each of the meetings, and we were able to cut a lot of the budgets down to where we are operating today. We also have two pieces of capital. We have capital in there. We used to have CIP in there. So the capital list that was provided or submitted by the senior leadership team is roughly $2.4 million, and there's various budgets in there. The detailed plan we provided that they required. There's a few bigger ones that are on the IT side. So we have like a tax system in there for imaging. There's an ultrasound in there. I have my accounting software in there. Things of that nature. The debt service, that number was provided by the CBJ, so that's what's going to take their principal interest for the various bonds we have. The charges for service, basically, we took an annual look at where we were and then just projected that over the last the rest of the year to come up with charges for services with an addition of a 5% increase. So we have a request to increase our charge master in aggregate 5%. So we won't do 5% across the board like we've done in prior years. So I want to be a little more strategic about our costs. So we have the capability with some of the systems we have to look at how we compare on different service lines and then price those accordingly. So 5% in aggregate for a charge increase. We also budgeted the mental health unit with an ADC of 10. One of the stretch goals, so that can increase the revenue as well. On the state revenue line in the budget, those are kind of where we set the grants, the various grants we have applications for. So as with grant revenue, that is an estimate of the grants we will receive. Interest income was based on cash we have as of today and used year-to-date rates to kind of project where our interest went. Knowing that interest rates can change at any given moment, and then we expect cash to increase with the collection of accounts receivable from Wildflower Court. The FTEs at the bottom of the budget, where it shows 713, so that is fully staffed if we were operating as we were operating today. Knowing that we have some operational challenges ahead of us. Some of the threats or changes that could drive the budget to look different in the future. Competition just in the market, not just the genome market, or if are we competing for surgeries that leave town? Is Blue Cross or Aetna driving some of the things out of town? So some of those things can change revenue. Provider turnover, we've seen that impact us in the past. So if we don't have the psychiatrist to staff the mental health unit, for instance, we can't staff it at the level we do today. So those are some of the unknowns we have. Also staff turnover, that always drives costs if we have to have more contract labor. Another thing we have a big factor in here is the continued operational improvement as we make changes to contracts and staffing levels. I put new programs up there just based on what we see today. You never know when you're going to add a home health or hospice program. And the last item up there, we are in the midst of union negotiations. So we did budget an estimate in there for an increase in salaries and wages, but we already know that, so. Yeah, we'll figure out that. We'll get to that.
But before you move on, why don't we just stick with this page? Are there any questions, Shelley or Deb, over on this, anything on this page? Kenny, do you have anything? No.
No.
Okay. Next page.
So what I have up here is the CBJ format of our budget, and so this is what will be submitted to the assembly after the board approves it, in this format. So you can see up there, there is an increase in personnel services from projected FY 24 to FY 25, and that goes back to the fully staff budget I talked about. On the offside of that, the commodities and services, you see a large increase there, and that's the reduction contract labor, so it exists on that another line of this place. The capital outlay is, as I described it, those are the pieces of equipment that were requested by that. The debt service is what it is at this point. You see down there, the capital projects list, that was a CIP number, so we started out with a request of 3 million to increase the fund maintenance programs, but when we looked at what we had sitting on the books with CBJ, it was sitting at 5.2 as of today. And so we felt that was enough to cover our student next year without appropriating more funds into that deferred maintenance account. And so we left that. Next slide. Charges for service, as I described them, with the increase in mental health and 5%. The state revenue comes at $750 of the various grants. Interest income is at 1.8 million. And this is, the land lease revenue is at 322, that's based on current leases. That we will have in FY 25 as of today. So with that, we have a total funding of 146 million. Slide. So with all of the incomes and expenses, we have a net decrease of 3.5 million to our fund balance at the end of the year if we continue the operations as we are today.
Joe, any questions for Joe, Shelley? Yeah. Couple of things I want to kind of highlight in here, I guess. Joe, if you go back up to the revenue slide, one right there. So charges for services, we had budgeted 140 million for this year. You're projecting, somewhere around, 4%. So light of that at 134 million, $600 off. So if you could talk about what's been the cause of that, and then setting the stage for why you think it's reasonable that we're going to add 10 million to it in 24.
The big drivers of that shortfall in budget, the biggest one was mental health unit. And so to start the year, we were running at the ADC of closer to 5. And so as we got staffing levels in line the last month or two, we were over 9 in January. We were 8.25 in February. So as we have staffing to support those patients, there is I don't think there's a shortage of patients to help fill the mental health unit at this point. So that's going to be the biggest leap. I think we can maintain that census of roughly 10 patients a day moving to next year. The other one were new programs. So we budgeted home health hospice throughout the whole fiscal year and the prices. So we had 12 months of revenue on for a lot of the programs that only started really in December. And so that shortfall kind of built up before we even got the program going. There's various other decreases, changes in services based on volumes of different departments as well.
Next. So I think that's right on. You can see that right there from the mental health unit too. And I agree with you. We're not going to have any shortage of patients. I know ABI right now is full. So which is really good. I heard that. So just talking about the state revenue, what are the grants that we anticipate getting? We got none last year. Is that correct?
So the way we were posted, this is something that might be cleaned up before the end of the year. We post grants as offset to expenses. And so in a cost base, and this is something that's going to be recognized when we do the cost report, those should be pulled out because they shouldn't offset costs. So that's one of the big findings in the thing. So that's gonna be something I clean up. We have a report already pulled, so we received grants. They were just offset costs.
So it wouldn't have gone in as,
Yeah, so that's why it doesn't pop up there at the top line. So we'll get that cleaned up before the end of the year, but it's just something that came to light recently.
So Joe, you know, our accounting, which can be done both on grossing everything up to profit or netting. But that the process of netting hurt our cost-based reimbursement. So reopening this, we hope to get, monies back just because of the way things were done that could be done better. Again, that's Joe.
and Ian, I just want to make sure I understood, that would close that gap that we were talking about where we had to pay the 1.4 million.
Yeah, we already paid that back.
Right.
So what this would create is a receivable back from Medicare back to us. So we net that this year.
And that would be like opening up the revenue cycle.
That's basically saying, and I think it's 2 years, so I think one and the other, but it's saying, we have more costs than we recognize. We'd like you to recognize it and pay us back because we think we overpaid you.
So the bottom line, Joe, $3.4 million loss as the city looks at things. Our loss is different from this because this doesn't include depreciation, but does include capital items. And it includes the principal component of debt service. So on a P&L basis, generally, roughly, what's the loss on a, do you know off the top of your head what that number was?
Roughly
7.5 million. So, $7.5 million, of which, how much of that is depreciation? It's around 8 million. isn't it? So it's basically kind of a wash on cash flows. basically. So there's a couple of things that I know you guys are, and I don't want to get into a deep dive, but I think it's just something to put out on the table that, for people to kind of expect, and looking, I guess, at both of you guys. And one is the kind of the evaluation you're doing on critical access and the possibilities of what that might portend and where that's going, right? And then the other one is this idea of looking at core hospital services with something, it's separate from these other services that are public health related services that were provided. And maybe we can just, without getting the limit too early to talk about numbers on that, but just for purposes of the budget and this discussion, where do you see both of those headed over the next months?
The critical access assessment will start when we get the Hall Redner contract signed. And so I know that's pending.
Speaking of which, I
I've been
was hoping he would lead with that.
No, I was in, thank you. I'm in contact with Rob. He sent over a couple of questions I have to answer. And then that'll be final. So expect it to be done next week.
Okay,
So we can get started on that important project.
great. That's great. And did you want to add something material besides my little dig about legal contract, about critical access? I mean, that's kind of the first one.
No, I think there's two dimensions to the critical access hospital. One is it better or worse reimbursement? That's one determination. The other is, can you actually meet the criteria, both legal and operationally? And I think one looks positive, the other one looks iffy. So it's what we have to go through, that legal discernment, whether or not we can shoot ourselves into that. So that is yet to be determined.
Okay, so that'll be starting soon and hopefully within months, weeks or months, we'll have more information.
I'll have a more definitive answer for you.
Yeah.
There, and then I would also say, even though from the way the accounting is done for the city, which is really a little bit different, what we use for management purposes, much more gap oriented. As I mentioned in my last CEO memo to the board, our expectation is we get back to about a 3% operating margin, so that we can not only pay our operating expenses, pay the cash outflows that are not recognized in operating expense like debt, but as well as have money to invest in these programs. We build that balance up, so. One of the things that we're looking at, and Joe's been on the forefront, using Excel spreadsheets, is breaking out different components of the, our regional hospital. So we have a better idea of economics of each one of them. Each one of those has different economics, so nursing home is different than hospital, which is different from health, hospice, and so on. So each of them will have a different fix. So we're in the process of doing that. Be more definitive here in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's very encouraging that you're doing that. And to focus on your kind of, it's like a business line almost of evaluation of kind of what we're operating. Because we've added a lot of kind of non-traditional healthcare items over the last few years. And that's had a significant impact on the market.
And just to brag on Joe, his view is let's break out Bartlett Regional Hospitals Enterprise Fund as if it was like 2018, which was the last fiscal year we actually made money, and then see what was added on subsequently to that. So that's given us a lot of insight to what are some of the things we have to do.
Yeah. And again, we're weeks, months, and we'll get more concrete.
I would say, yes, in terms of numbers, I would say that, Kim is our COO and CNO is really looking very carefully at operations to see how we can improve. So the work has already begun in terms of identifying our opportunities. And that includes the FTE committee that Chad, Joe, and Kim are on, as well as some of the work that we're doing with the A3s that Gail and Dave are working on. So there's a lot of things that are going on, but one of the things that'll be important is that once we have all that in place, to make sure that we have good direction from our board in terms of what they'd like to see. Hence why I said, why I was arguing for 3% operating margin, because that gives us something to shoot for. It's a way to look at our decisions. Does it help or hurt that goal? That's a very typical goal to be sustainable, is 3 to 5%, which is for every dollar of net revenue received, you only want 3 cents to 5 cents left over.
Yes. Thank you for that. I'm looking forward to that continued analysis and discussion. We don't have, we do, I'm sorry, we do at the bottom of page 20. Unless there's more questions from Kelly or from Deb, we've got a suggested motion at the bottom. That page.
Kelly gets to it better.
Kelly, do you have it there?
I do. I move the Finance Committee of Bartlett Regional Hospital move the FY25 budget to the full Board of Directors with the recommendation for approval and transmittal to the CBJ Assembly.
I'll second.
Second, any further discussion?
And so I just want to make sure that we add something to this motion that will give Joe and his team a little bit of flexibility in case we need to tweak it, tweak the numbers like you and I have talked about and stuff. So this might not be the exact complete version that goes to the CBJ, but I wanted to have a little bit of operational flexibility. Maybe that would be the word. Max, I'm not 100% sure. Maybe E can help me with that.
So I guess if we make this budget recommendation to the assembly now, my understanding is as long as we're within whatever the CBJ's window, their timeline is, if we need to amend this, we can. We're not prevented from doing it by virtue of our motions. So I guess I'm talking out loud here. Can you not to counter what you're saying? Because I agree with you. We want that flexibility. But I don't think that we need to build in the motion, because I think we can just come back and amend it if we need to.
Yes.
So I guess what my thoughts were that we wouldn't have to come back for another motion from our board, our body, before it goes to the assembly. That's what I was trying to get at it. I'm not sure that that's even something we should do next.
I think that whatever the final, the form and content of this spreadsheet that we have here at the bottom of, it's on page 28, this is the CBJ form. I mean, if you will, this is the fill in the blanks kind of thing that Joe communicates to them. And I think that if we change any change that happens, so this is the summary of the 3 pages that Joe just went over. He had them broken out. But I think any number on that page that changes, we have to approve. So I don't think necessarily gives them flexibility to change that stuff unless this board has approved that. So I think, you know.
That's my understanding as well, that
I think we're all cognizant of the fact that there's work going on, right? Yeah, and we're still 4 or 5 months before the beginning of the fiscal year.
Exactly.
Right? And so, you know, if there's a change that has to happen, they'll just bring it back to us and consider that at the time. Are you good with that?
Oh, absolutely. I just wanted to throw that out there and see what
Yeah, absolutely.
Joe thought about that, you guys.
Okay, so any objection? Hearing none. Committee comments and questions? Kelly or Deb? Any? Nope.
actually I
Sure.
think.
Go ahead, Shelley.
I just have a quick question as I'm looking on page 28 why is there no land lease revenue listed for FY24?
So in 24, it gets buried in other operating, and so. I know it's in there. My understanding is probably.
I think it's probably the difference between the way it's presented or rolled up for GAAP versus rolled up for budget purposes.
Yeah,
And it would be in the charges from services line, wouldn't it, Joe?
yeah. So it's in there in the total revenue. It's just not broken out. That's something I could pull out.
Gotcha.
Administrative change, it's a good point, good, fine, but I think that's an administrative thing if we're moving a little bit of revenue around here or there. Yeah,
Got it. Thank you.
okay.
I just wanted to, thanks you guys for the deep dive and the comprehensive explanation of what's going into the budget. I'm sorry I missed the preview. But I really appreciate that we're some of the things that we've been talking about and requesting from Bartlett Finance Department are finally coming to fruition, that we're going to start seeing and having more confidence and more timely. That's really been a big issue. Once we get a new system for you, for us, the timeliness will be awesome. It's hard to make decisions when you're a couple months behind.
Yes.
So thank you. All.
Before we adjourn, the next meeting is April 12th at 2024. Do you see any conflict at this point, Shelley or Deb, on those dates?
You said April,
Yeah, April 12th, noon.
April 12th.
I'm good.
I think I'm good.
Okay, great. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Start to the next one.
Okay.